Okay. Well, welcome. It's a nice, humid day. Good day to be in air conditioning. So I was out standing on the street, waving at people, and it was a little muggy. So I'm glad you're here. It's good to see smiling faces and faces ready to learn to take on the government. So with that, I'd like to, let's, as we do all things, we'll lead in prayer, start in prayer, and then we'll do our pledges right after that. And hopefully, anybody in here know the Texas pledge? Nobody knows it? All right, we're going to do that. Our children do it at schools, they're supposed to, so we're going to get to do it as well and join them as well. So if you would, bow your heads in prayer, and we ask the one triune God to help encourage us and guide us. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. We sit before you, Holy Spirit, conscious of our sinfulness, but aware that we gather in your name. Come to us, remain with us, and enlighten our hearts. Give us light and strength to know your will, to make it our own and to live it in our lives. Guide us by your wisdom. Support us by your power, for you are God, sharing the glory of Father and Son. You desire justice for all, and enable us to uphold the rights of others. Do not allow us to be misled by ignorance or corrupted by fear or favor. Unite us to yourself in the bonds of love, and keep us faithful to all that is true. As we gather in your name, may we temper justice with love, so that all our decisions may be pleasing to you, and earn the reward promised of good and faithful service. We ask this of you who live and reign with the Father and the Son, one God, forever and ever. Amen. And if you would stand with me, and we'll recite the pledges. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. The Texas Pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you very much. We are here on a great day. This is tax, as you know, we just finished tax season. And while it was April 15th, it was transferred to April 18th, Monday. And so we all had that bite. We're all feeling the impacts of inflation right now. And increased property valuations, which is great from a standpoint of selling a property, but then you have to, if you need to replace it, that's a problem if you're switching one for one. And so we are in a situation where we find ourselves that the state legislature can do more than it has. And that's typically the case in pushing the envelope. So this will give you tools in using the current law to your advantage. And while each of us have the ability to learn, we each have individual rights in what we can do and exercise to make sure that we maximize the reduction in the appraisal district valuation that will help us lessen our taxes. And I've personally had Mike Berlanga help me with mine, and you'll hear about the steps of the process. And not only do we have our informal, we had our formal, and then we appealed to the state of Texas. And so I've been through the whole process personally. I've helped other people do the same. We've held these property tax protest education seminars, I think, since 2017 or thereabouts. And right when Michael Berlanga started giving them. And so we've had multiple here. And while I'm on that subject, I want to thank the Christopher Hall, the Knights Columbus Council 7613 in Geary. Thank you for hosting us. This is a free event, and they've made this to us available to us to use and graciously. So I want to thank them. If you ever want to rent this facility, you can go to ChristopherHall.org. ChristopherHall.org. It's a beautiful facility. They do a great job of helping whatever party or reception you're having here. And so look at them if you're looking for a place, ChristopherHall.org. Is it patriotic to do this? And I will tell you it is. And Michael's going to go into this because the more people who protest their property taxes, the more leverage. It's just like voting. We're in election season right now. There's an election coming up this Saturday that includes the two Texas constitutional amendments, the City of San Antonio bond election, 6 propositions, and then Northside Independent School District has their own bond, and then there's school board elections for the Northeast Independent School District, which you're in the Northeast Independent School District right now. And I highly encourage you to get out and vote. If you haven't done so already, this Saturday, May 7th. and you can vote anywhere in the county. And for more information on that, you go to SanAntonioFamilyAssociation.com and our sister organization called TexasFamilyAction.com and find out information and recommendations on voting. So SanAntonioFamilyAssociation.com and TexasFamilyAction.com. My name is Patrick Berlanga, and I'm one of the board members of San Antonio Family Association, one of the founders. And the purpose of this organization was established to protect, defend, and promote the family. So how many people believe that your taxes impact your family? Absolutely. It impacts your family from a standpoint of what you can do for vacation, what you can do for Christmas, what you can do in providing for your children's not only education, because not all education always follows the children yet. That's another thing we need to push the legislature on, to make sure that our tax dollars follow the child and wherever they go for their education. And then also, so we don't have those things. So you might be paying for private school. You might be helping donate to a charter school that doesn't get facilities money from the state. So all these things impact your ability to provide for your family. So that's why we're involved in the San Antonio Family Association, is to help you do better in your family, to raise a strong and healthy family. Because we know the nucleus of society, the basic building block of society is the family. If we lose the family, we lose our culture, we lose our world, we lose our nation. So everything's centered around the family. So we're here to protect, defend, and promote the family, the building blocks of society. So I want to thank Michael Berlanga for being here. He's been doing these seminars for about a little over 5 years now, and he's been traveling multiple counties and cities over the last several days. So we got him back in town. We're privileged to have him, and want to thank and please welcome with me Michael Berlanga, CPA and Realtor, and he is here to provide and be a great resource to you. By the way, while I'm on the subject of realtors, just so you know, who in here is a realtor? Eric over here, and Michael Berlanga. So we will send out, we have a resources we'll send out later on of people, just for other resources you can use and to know people that you can trust and resource there. But one of the great things that we've enjoyed about Michael Berlanga is he brings into his presentation a sense of God and how our purpose in life is in serving God and in serving our man. And so one of the things you're doing is helping serve other people by being here and by filing your protest. So welcome to Michael Berlanga.
Please tell me if you think I need it, but I'm going to move around about. What's your name? Yes. Eric and Susan. Susan, and y'all are married? Yes. And you're both real estate agents? She's the broker? So she's the boss. Okay. So who's the feeler? Who's the thinker? You're the thinker? And she's the feeler? So without her, life wouldn't be so much fun? That's for sure. That's for sure. And without him, you'd be in jail, right? Okay, now, just make sure. Thank you. We're going to pick on you some more. So I'm a rapper from St. Mary's University. When I was 14, I was actually in a seminary, but God had a sense of humor, unfortunately, because he wanted to call my father to be with him suddenly. He had a stroke. So if I talk fast, it's not because I'm a Yankee, it's because I don't know if I'll ever see you. It means a lot to me to be here. I'm 62, right? So I mean, they say, "Oh, I'm going to put you on hold." I said, "I might not be here when you come back." So I'll talk fast. I'll make up for any lost time because I was late. I apologize. But so I went to Central Catholic, and for those of you that know, it's not a seminary. I prayed, dear God, if you want me to be a priest, you wouldn't let me get a scholarship to Central Catholic. Well, clearly you want me to be a priest, and I got a scholarship. And then by my mother with 6 brothers and sisters and myself, I said, I don't want her to be, I don't want her to be widowed with the burden of all of us. I'm going to get out of high school as fast as I can. And not only did I get out quickly, I got out with the dumbest class Central Catholic ever had. Are you familiar with Central Catholic? School of Academic Excellence? Well, I graduated from top of that class. So it's evidence that they had to be the biggest losers of all time. Hopefully no offense to any of my Central Catholic buddies.
It was just that class.
It was just that class. No Central. My brother's on the board. The Canucks and Haley's are leading it. But that gave me a full scholarship to St. Mary's University. It's where I went and got a degree in accounting. And again, I guess I found the right class to get out there in 3 years. But from there, I went on and got a master's in tax from UTSA. So go Roadrunners. But what's really entertaining about talking about the Roadrunners is they played a great football season, right? And the conference championship was hosted by, can anybody guess who the conference championship was hosted by? No, it was hosted by one of those name brand burgers. No, teasing. Ryan and Company. Ryan and Company alleges that they're the biggest property tax company in the world. Isn't that sad? That there's a business of protesting property taxes that would enable you to sponsor the conference championship of any division. So pardon me, I have to laugh my way through this because I feel like a comedian. I feel like Seinfeld on the way up. I'm doing improv everywhere I go. And I'm also a real estate broker, so I appreciate what you and I do. We want values to go up. In the words of Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, we want your property values to go up. We just don't want you to be taxed every step along the way. I always say, well, Lieutenant Governor, you told us that at our statewide conference 6 years ago. I'm still waiting for the property taxes to make it affordable. So I'm very disappointed. I won't be polite in that respect. I'll be respectful, because the governor's mother-in-law knows I know 2 + 2, because before she passed away, she was my grade school teacher. So I know that they got that figured out, and what we're gonna say here today is in respect. But, so I'm a CPA, and some of y'all think that stands for Certified Public Accountant. But when it comes to taxes, I'm a cow parking attendant. Because if I have enough cattle like I do on my ranch, I pay less than I do on a house in the urban area. I'm also a car parking attendant. So I'd love to work with you because I prefer commercial real estate. I presume maybe I'll do some residential. If we can help each other, pick my brain. So as a tax and real estate advisor, you text tax and resolutions now. If you make me a really hard sell, I might let you hire me. If not, like Rebetta's, I might just show up just to give government grief. And we're going to tell you that story because they're here before they leave. And but I help you with the IRS. So what that means is I don't prepare your returns. I'm not interested in that. I only want to deal with problems. I deal with liens, levies, audits, criminal investigations, because I love meeting future hard donors, right? If you've ever met a revenue officer, that's the person you want on your short list if you need a transplant. Because they generally haven't used their hearts. Okay, but the reason I tell you that is because I want to compare and contrast the revenue officer and the appraisal review board panel that you're going to go in front of. So, but as he said, I'm very faith-based in this presentation. I'm president of the Christian Chamber of Texas, which, by God's humor, we got a big grant from the county. Did you hear about it? No, of course you didn't hear about it. They whispered. And Mr. Berlanga, we got the check. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I started out the Black Chamber, the Brown Chamber, the Asian Chamber. But thank you very much. In the name of the chamber, we take your money and we're going to go grow the message. Because the message for us tonight is that Jesus said, pay to Caesar what is Caesar's, and God what is God's. And Caesar's dead. And the governor's not the king now. He's great to me. I mean, at the very least, out of respect, I'll call him governor. But there's a whole legislature that has failed to deliver a system that would enable us to not even be here tonight. So I give you that. But if you don't trust in a sacred text that I hold dear, I can tell you I've been in the mosques and I've been in the temples, and their Muslim property tax and their Sikh property tax wasn't lower than our Christian property tax. So I'm very popular wherever I go. It doesn't matter if I can say, oh, very good, because we have the same problem. We own the 7-Eleven. And I'm like, great. We can at least agree on that because I will not hesitate to say Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. And though you may think he's a great prophet, that's what me and we have in common. And maybe that's the beginning of the Great Commission. Don't know. But the Texas Taxpayer Bill of Rights says we have the right to contest a decision. That's what we're all here to do. So if you're not feeling moved by the Word of God, feel moved by the reference to this Bill of Rights that the governor now talks about, but it leaves us a little bit lacking in all ways. Tonight we're going to cover your right to protest, which obviously you know that you have the right, but believe it or not, a lot of people don't even understand the first step in that right is asking for the evidence. We're going to cover that, and we're going to cover an evidence case. We're going to give you a case. 3 years ago, maybe it was 2 years ago, I would put on the first half of this presentation, and then I would hope that people got it. Well, then there was somebody sitting in the audience, Mr. Cifuentes, and he said, I think, is this what you're talking about? And he put together his presentation, and he walked all the way through it. But you're going to get, thanks to the graciousness of Mr. Cifuentes, he said, you can take this wherever you want. So he goes with me everywhere, in the spirit and in the presentation. You're gonna see his case study, and it wasn't with me in front of it. It wasn't me putting on a tie and I represented it. In fact, I was behind the camera while he was on the Zoom with his wife. You'll learn about that. And then you'll learn about the right to appeal any ruling of the county if you want to go further to an arbitration. Last but not least, I'll tell you, we need to protest. By petition and prayer, I may be on the ballot for comptroller, if God has a sense of humor again, and please vote. We've got to tell these people, you've got to find a better way, because they haven't yet. So, last but not least, if those two authorities don't get you confident, I love this quote from Judge Learned Hand. Tax avoidance is not tax evasion. Right? We're not talking fraud. We're just talking respecting the law and the ignorance of the County Appraisal District to come into our homes. Now, that's the calendar. So the day I want to focus on, the two first days are, when are we valuing the property? It's January 1st. It's not today. It's not what your clients would ask you for today. Today you do a CMA, you sell it next month. That's good. We're not hypocrites. We're looking back to January 1st. And our last day of protest is May 16th. I know it's May 15th, but it's on a weekend, so we get the benefit of falling to Monday. So this has to be updated. I learned the other day, it's not customer service at bcad.org, it's protest at bcad.org. So by May 16th, you can file your notice of protest. You can file your notice of protest at protest@bcad.org. Okay, so that will enable you to email it and have evidence that you emailed it. Please do not use regular mail. Use certified mail if you must. But I need you to take from this that you must have evidence that you sent it. I do not trust the post office, and I don't trust any county to give you leniency. There will be as many as 160,000 protests if Mr. Amnesty guesses right. Last year, 120,000. If I have anything to do with it, it will be 320,000. So we're going to overwhelm them with protests, and we're going to remember, we don't know how they came up with a value for January 1st until we ask for the evidence. Now, to really drive that point home, I've put in red, if your house burned down because the fireworks got out of hand on New Year's Eve, what would that mean? We'd be talking about land and slab, right? I don't care if my brother, the builder with Texas Homes, if he immediately showed up on January the 2nd and rebuilt the home, and now you're getting the keys, and today y'all could sell it for him. It doesn't matter. On January 1st, what was the condition of the home? So if you're already thinking about, that's a good point. You know, I've been spending some money fixing this or fixing that, or I haven't fixed this or fixed that. Precisely. That's what we're going to go through as part of our discussion. So everybody got the love letter, right? Everybody here got the love letter that said, not a bill, not a tax statement, do not pay. And this is part of why 80% of taxpayers don't protest. Because we've been lulled into the sense of security, because 5 times on that notice, 5 times, you're going to find them say, do not pay. This is not an invoice. So for too long, our family and friends and neighbors said, hey, this is good. Property's going up in value. Don't know if it's accurate, but it's nice to be told that. So we flip it over, and we find our notice of protest. So on the back side of that piece of paper that told you how your value went up, you're going to find the Prairie County Appraisal notice of protest. I've broken it down to 3 slides, and we're the only county in the state so far that says don't forget to check the box to request for evidence. They've done it in red. So when I'm traveling, I tell people, I said, if you haven't been to Berrien County, we are the friendliest tax county in the state. Because at least we tell you that much. Most of the counties actually get the promulgated form from the comptroller, which has yet to recognize what is our state law right that we've been recognizing for some time. It's sad. And that's one of the reasons why I'm going to speak in not the most complimentary way of that office. Because I don't understand why Mike A. Mosquito, who everybody thinks is the devil, at least did this years ago. That's not me. I put the red star for presentation purposes. But it's been like that for the 6 years I've been around, doing this.
So then, it's gonna generally have your name and address already pre-printed. They won't have your phone number, they won't have your email address. Now, they're not gathering to steal it. But the blessing of COVID, yes, the blessing of COVID was that the month before COVID, 1,000 people signed up to hear me speak. And the next week, we couldn't even use a great hall like this to get 100 of them in. So I got a little depressed, a little temporary. I was like, geez, just when I thought we were hitting our stride, but God had a plan. What was that plan? That plan was to say, for the Attorney General to tell all those governments, you have to grant these people a hearing, whether it be by phone or whether it be by video. And I couldn't spell Zoom like most of us before then. But the blessing in disguise then was that I no longer felt provincial. I didn't feel like, well, if you're not in Bear County, I can't help you. I don't care if you're in El Paso, Laredo, or Lubbock. The law's the same. Now, you may want to pretend it's different, but I know otherwise. So by giving them that phone number and that email address, guess what? You're bringing the hearing to you. You can have it by telephone. You can have it by video. You don't have to go down there and wait for the panel that they finally let you in on. And I was on the phone the other day helping a tax-exempt organization, a Bible study group, and I learned that we had to wait 2 hours. Now, fortunately, I have a nice view of the Oak Hills Country Club. You can take 3 hours for life here. I'm not going anywhere, make myself a taco. But the point being is that I would prefer that you use phone or video to avoid the inconvenience of getting down there and waiting and being frustrated. So offer that up, and you get to section 3, the reason for protest. This year they've consolidated the 2 most common reasons that everybody should use, and that the value is either incorrect based on market value, that's our business, comparative market analysis, or the value's unequal when compared to other properties. So if 4 out of 5 of my neighbors don't protest, what am I to assume if all my neighbors' values are high? Well, they didn't protest, but silence is an affirmation. So just because they weren't here tonight and they didn't protest last year, that's their problem. Now, let's say the opposite occurs. 4 out of my 5 neighbors have their values lower than mine. Then I use that argument. But if not, I dismiss it. So you can learn to say after me, I understand, Mr. Appraiser or the panel, that, approximately 80% of people don't protest their values. And that's a record low. It's never been like 75% or 70%. It used to be 85% didn't protest. Now we're hoping to change that. But for that reason, you're going to get 2 different types of values. We're going to go through what they send you, because when they start to ask you, do you have any facts that you would like to help resolve the protest? I say, not yet. I'm not going to volunteer anything. I'm not going to negotiate against myself. I don't even know where they got the number. But you can see over here, I put it remotely by Zoom. I do not want a single member panel, and I'll explain to you why shortly. And my mother failed the first grade because she couldn't speak English. So while I'm respectful of our bilingual, city, I respectfully ask you to pick the language that favors you. Now, in my case, I'm bicultural. I know to take the shuck off the tamale, but I'm trilingual. I speak real estate, English, and taxes. So I know that in English, when they ask me what the value is, and it says optional, then I have the option not to say anything. So I'm not going to volunteer any evidence. I'm not going to tell them what I think the value is until what? I get their evidence. Are we good? Are we good so far? Because we could stop in about 2 minutes. And if this is all you did, and if you could do me a favor, tell everybody, just go file the notice of protest, get the reservation at the tax restaurant, and ask for the menu before you figure out whether you want to swallow it. Okay? Now, when you get to section 5, I want you to pay close attention, because it says this: you can make a special panel request for property value of $52 million or more. So if that applies to anybody, I need to meet you personally. We're going to Ruth's Chris or someplace, okay? But for the rest of us, that doesn't apply, just ignore section 5. But section 6, then we move on to, we check it as property owner, or if we're acting on behalf of a relative, we might say property owner's agent. You get a designated form, sign it, send it, get it on, and now wait. Wait, and then you'll get your evidence. And if you need some help after you get the evidence, then we've got two great real estate professionals here, and or you got me to help you with the process, or some combination thereof. And we're gonna talk about being a real estate professional as distinguished from an agent or broker. So, May 16th is the deadline. Please, if you love your neighbors, you love yourself, you're following that commandment, tell everybody where you were tonight. Because they're gonna appreciate it, at the very least, to know that they had the right to know, not the need to fear. So I use Atascosa as a baseline because they have 8 appraisers. I'm counting anybody that can remotely say appraiser in that office. They have 8. And so what is significant about the fact that they have 8 is that even in a small county like Atascosa, with 40,000 property accounts, they will tell you, they will say this in front of the county appraisal, the appraisal review board panel. We use mass appraisal to come up with our value. What that means is 40,000 accounts were divided by 8 appraisers, and that's an average of 5,000 accounts. Between January 1st and April, each one of them figured out how to appraise 5,000 accounts. Is that possible? Maybe they made a mistake? I mean, I'll bet you even the Archbishop, if he handed out the communion to 5,000 people, he'd probably miss a mouth or two. You know, just possibly, right? Somebody faint or whatever. But the math doesn't make any sense. That they know as much as y'all knew when you bought your home, borrowed money, and the lender ordered an appraiser, who ordered the appraiser to go in the home, to actually go check it out. Not to just flash a drone over the neighborhood, which they don't even do that. In Bear County, I know you're, Atascosa, but you know, they don't have the resources we do. No, it's worse. This is per Mike Anesita, the chief appraiser. 9,000 accounts per appraiser. So if you're going in front of an appraiser, who's then going in front of a panel that has responsibility for 9,000 accounts, grant them the possibility that they just making a mistake. Not that they're incompetent, they just don't know what we know. So they use standard methodology, employing common data, allowing for statistical data. Now, if I didn't have a fine education, I wouldn't even be able to say all those multisyllabic words. But the point being is, they're using a universe of information, and it's not specific to your case. So what does that mean for us? That means a mass appraisal process can cause them to make mistakes. They're going to disclose they use mass appraisal, not fee-based appraisal, which is what we refer to when we talk to our clients about borrowing money. So mass appraisal can lead to mistakes because they didn't adjust for deferred maintenance. They didn't adjust for functional issues. They didn't adjust for location issues. And you know who can make the biggest adjustment? It's that appraisal review board panel. Okay, that panel of 3. And that's why we have the advantage. Now, it's a little difficult this year, I'll grant you, because they're taking the values to the moon and back. But they do not know your house. Please own that. Now, we're not going to talk about exemptions, except please, if you haven't applied for your homestead exemption, make sure you did. If you're a disabled vet, make sure you do. If you're over 65, make sure you do. They don't know your birthday. They don't necessarily know that you're living there, even though you're paying a utility bill. Sometimes you have to get them up to speed. Both the appraisal district and the collector's office have money in their budget to keep people off the rolls if they shouldn't have those exemptions, and hopefully to get them on. So they should be very friendly in helping you make sure you get on the exemption. If you have a problem with that, send an email to them, copy me, and let's make sure that you didn't just get bad customer service. Generally, this is not a stumbling block, but you want to take advantage of your exemptions. Oh, and when we get to comparative market data, you want to ask a real estate professional. So my newest best friend colleagues over here have just been promoted. He's the agent, she's the broker, but they're professionals. They're here because they care enough to possibly be available if you want them to look at that market data. Why? Not because they're going to hard sell you on listing your home, but because you're going to tell your friends and your family and your neighbors, these people looked it up, if your real estate professional isn't available that sold it to you 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. So you're going to request the evidence package. And if you request it, they have to give it. That's state law. 14 days prior to the hearing. So you don't have to go to the gunfight. You don't have to go to the gunfight with a switchblade. And you don't have to go there and show up, and then the next thing you know, you're in an informal hearing, and you're overwhelmed by the data. By state law, they have to give it to you, and then they have to wait 14 days before your hearing can be scheduled. Are we good with that? Because it's real important, such that for the few people that I work with, personally, I don't even file the notice of protest. Because I want you to file it, and then when you get the evidence, then let's make sure that that date works for you. Because by law, I wish I had this in the slide, you have the right as a homeowner to reschedule that date one time. Whereas as an agent, I don't. So for some of you that have hired people in the past, more power to you. I'm not promoting that you go hire people. You don't need to hire people if you have a great real estate professional to review the comps. You're going to know what's wrong with your property, and you're going to then realize that you're not going to just get swept in with a pile of protests and find that you don't even know what's going on. I had somebody just the other day in Houston say to me, I've been hiring somebody for 8 years. First time anyone ever told me to send him a picture. So he fired him. He felt empowered that he could do it himself. I said, great. I think you need some images to better tell the story. But once the county gives you their evidence, they cannot continue to add to it. Unless it's a major error. If you added a whole new wing to your home, then maybe they could. But if it's not a major error, they don't add evidence. You've got their data, and in their data, what they're going to tell you is this is our description of your property. These are measurements and characteristics of your home. Is it a 3-bedroom, 2-bath? Is it a 1-story or a 2-story? Is it certain size, and how big is the land? And they make mistakes. Believe it or not, they're going to make a mistake occasionally, but not often. Maybe 20% of the time. But it doesn't hurt to check.
Where do they get their data?
Where do they get their data? From history? Do they cross-check with permits? No, not necessarily, but yes, they're getting better at that if you went in and submitted a permit. But as far as the measurement of the house, they may have the measurement of your rooftop, and yet that doesn't exclude the area that isn't air conditioned.
Living
Yeah, they could make a mistake in that regard. And I encourage you to to look at that data and say, wait a minute. When I had it appraised, the appraiser took the time to measure just the climate-controlled space. But you're telling me my house is bigger than that, based on the roof line. You're telling me that shed that when I bought it was still there, isn't still there. You're telling me a lot of things that you don't know, that I know, aren't consistent. And you only make the case that helps you. In the words of Mike Amasquita, don't help him do his job. That's what he said to my Christian Chamber audience when we had him on stage there. The second set of numbers, as I told you earlier, is going to be a set of equity values. There's nothing equitable when you're compared to people who maybe were apathetic about the process. But if it's so inequitable that they're lower than yours, then you want to point to that and say, hey, wait a minute. I don't know where you got this number, but that doesn't compare to my neighbors. But the third one that's most common, that's being used by the media to hype up that you just have no chance, is market values. Everybody's hearing the woe stories. And the realtors, we don't have enough inventory. No, I grant you, we don't have enough inventory. But it's not because every property went up in value in my neighborhood that wasn't ready to sell. They didn't consult with a realtor. Like a used home, a used car, it's not ready to go to market. So the first opportunity you have, if you check off, yes, I want an informal hearing, that's now required to be offered by state law. A couple of years ago, Austin was not press the button. It used to be that it wasn't required by state law to offer an informal, what they call hearing, I call a conversation. It's as casual as you're not visiting, but you're the homeowner, I'm the appraiser, and you're saying, you sent me this evidence, could you explain it to me? Right? Explain it to me, Lucy. And then you say, I've got some pictures, I got some estimates. And at the end of it, he makes you an offer, or she makes you an offer. Think of it as an offer you would get from a salesman at a car dealership. Do you ever get your best offer? Right? Or what do they usually say? well, I can only do this, but let me check with the manager. Except they don't go check with the manager. There's a little window of opportunity by which they can then make an offer to you. So they're required now to be offered. I treat them as warm-ups or practice, where I'm practicing my presentation on that person, and I'm inviting that person to be an advisor. You know, I'm saying, you know, I saw that you were wearing a golf shirt. I'm a golfer. Hey, how's your game? I see you got a knee brace. You know, we're chit-chatting it up. If you love me like you love your brother, assuming you have a brother, what would you tell me I could have done better? Then suddenly you're telling me, well, young man, if you would bring more pictures, or if you would bring estimates to go with those pictures, then I probably could have made a bigger adjustment. Or maybe I've even asked them, do you think my sister here should go to the formal panel? She's never done this before. You know, he goes, yeah, I think you ought to go to the panel. I can only offer so much. So from the informal hearing, where do we go? We go to a formal hearing. Now, that sounds very scary, doesn't it? So imagine 3 chairs here, and I don't need to drag up 3 chairs to drag up 3 people, because y'all are all awake, y'all are all alert. But I actually took a course to be on the panel, to be on that jury of 3. The comptroller put it on. I spent $50 in a day of my life I'll never get back. And the thing that I remember most that made it worthwhile is that they put it in writing. 1, you have to have no qualifications, no academic qualification, period. You could even have a felony record and you could be on the panel. But she's laughing, but fortunately Patrick knows me. I tell the truth and just tell it in a funny way. They also said, pay attention and do not fall asleep. Now, what has any of us done where that was a standard? Don't fall asleep. This is what you can look forward to. 3 people who can fog a mirror, at least at some point during the day, and hopefully have their eyes open. It's in writing. I can't make this up. I'm not demeaning anybody that's ever been on a panel. But if that's what they're telling us, then who are these people? They are people trained only in the process of the procedures. How to read into the record that you're here and you're the property owner. And the panel board is, you know, Johnny and Susie and Jill. And then my favorite is, you know, the appraiser. Because they ask both the taxpayer, they ask the appraiser, the question that just really gets under my skin. I've given you all my academic accolades and all that good stuff, a few licenses. You know, I've got some accomplishment. And they ask, are you licensed as an appraiser in the state of Texas? There's only one question, only one answer. That's no. If you want to be respectful. Not no, but I create the need for appraisers. I give them more business. Right. This is what we get to say no to, and then here's the appraiser on the other end. And I feel like the hosannas, right? Oh, it's the appraiser. You know, should I bow, genuflect? I mean, come on, seriously. I mean, so you see, we've got 3 people in the middle listening to a case where the appraiser is raised up and you, the taxpayer, are reduced to what? You don't understand. You just don't know. You don't know how to read that data. It doesn't matter that you consulted with a professional. It doesn't matter, unlike a murder victim, you know, who cannot be a witness, right, at the trial. You know what you, as a criminal, you feel what you haven't done to your house. So what are we dealing with when we have 3 people who are fogging a mirror and staying awake because that's what they've been told to do, have no background in any formal education of real estate or appraisal or law or accounting or necessarily anything. No requirement. We recognize that they consist of either feelers or thinkers. Let's boil it down. I mean, we have our friendly couple here. One acknowledged she was the feeler. The other one said he said he was the thinker. Well, what does that mean? That doesn't mean that he has no feelings. Obviously, he was wise enough to marry her. Or it doesn't mean that, you know, she's not a thinker, she's the broker. It means that the feelers tend to lead with charisma, with motion, with like a salesman. They're going to try and make a deal. Or receptionists are going to try and make you feel comfortable. Or if they're heart surgeons, you know, then they're high thinkers. If you're a low thinker, you might be an accountant. right? Two accountants come up, they meet each other, one looks at the other one's shoelaces, the other one looks at the other one's belt buckle. We're not known for having any communication style, so I'm trying to come out of my shell. It's taking me a while. But what I want you to point out is that in the English-speaking population and Spanish-speaking, by the way, you know, most of us fall into one of these categories, and therefore we have to flex our style to get to the other 75% of the population that's listening to whatever it is we have to say. So what does that mean in regular terms? That means if you forget nothing else that I remember nothing else I tell you, you want to inform with facts. You look at me if this will help you visually. Inform with facts, entertain with images, right? Words, numbers, and pictures. And by doing that, you flexed your style. So the analytical over there is going to want to give them facts. But the feeler is going to be, oh, I'm going to show them some pictures. If we do both, then it doesn't matter if there's two feelers or two thinkers, we're going to get 2 out of 3 are going to be feeling like, yeah, I really relate to that message. So you want to inform, you want to entertain, you want to inspire, and then by that man, you're flexing to your audience, the audience of 3. Because what? You've got description of your property, you've got conditions, and you've got locations that help you argue strictly market data. Some of you are here going, you know, but I'm going to e-file, right? Because I'm digital, I'm cool, I'm hip. I mean, I'm 62 and I get excited when my email opens on my phone. So I understand some of y'all are ahead of me. But if you take out the human element, well, good luck. You've just discounted your ability to have them have that panel of 3. So, you know, I'm a little tired, but I really do appreciate that story about that cemetery next to you, or that railroad track, or that fact that you back up your house to Thousand Oaks, or whatever. Because you're going to offer that up. So, again, it used to be I'd be done. But thanks to Mr. Cifuentes, at this point, like you, he's saying, I think I'm getting what he's saying. It's a lot to digest. It's like a fire hose as fast as he talks. So, Mr. Cifuentes said, is this what you're talking about? I said, yes, please. Can I show your package? And he said, yes. All I did was put my name, address, gave him a little bit of background on the fact that it's 17 years old, and I started a list that I've got painting, and I got window problems, and I got flooring issues. And then pay close attention. Now, I don't care whether you're Republican or Democrat. Trey Gowdy wrote a great book. It's called It Never Hurts to Ask. And why is that? Because when you ask a question, you have subliminally, you have honored that person by saying, I don't know. You might. You probably do. Who am I asking the question of? I'm asking of the panel. Instead of condescending to them, instead of putting a limit on what God has given you the ability to add, I said, I don't know how much you should adjust for the green belt, or the odd-shaped lot, or the steep driveway, or the 0-degree incline, or the fact that there's no steps and he lives up on a hill. So why put a number that doesn't have the possibility of going higher? Or making the point that maybe you should be more generous than what the appraiser is saying, well, we've considered all these numbers. Because a picture tells 1,000 words, right? So for those of you that were getting tired of digesting facts, now you just felt it, like, wow, finally. I don't have to listen to him, read the words. I see what he's talking about. There's pictures of a property needs painting. Oh, and everybody's going to ask, well, I'm told I can only bring 10 pictures. Well, it says 10, I don't know. I have 3 pictures on a slide. Do I get to bring 10 slides and suddenly I have 30 pictures? I mean, that's the math they taught us at Central Catholic. You know? 3, the Holy Trinity created 2 parents, created 1 child, and I know that, 3 times 0 might be 0 in math, but 3 times 0 doesn't negate that there was 3 before me. So that's how a 0 becomes a 1. Anyway, so Rodriguez Painting is the painter that we consult with, not Rodriguez specifically, but somebody that's going to give us a high bid. Not our favorite cousin who's going to give us the labor-only bid because we're going to offer to get the materials. That's great if you want to be your own contractor. But we're not talking about contracting. We're talking about what ifs and what about. What could it be? And look at the windows. He's pointing out, they were installed in 2003. Look, this one's broken. Look at the little chip here. Now, I don't know if it goes that way all throughout the house, but it looks like a good picture. And then, and it would take this, because I would have nothing less than Anderson windows, or Puddle windows, or whoever, the high end of the window business is. And then, and the dishwasher, years ago it leaked, and there's a little stain, kind of caused a little damage to the flooring. And it also got to the carpet. Carpet's a little dated, mildew. So there's the bid for the flooring. So you can see how both the feelers and the thinkers are now starting to feel a little momentum, and now I've got the advantage. Because the appraiser has not been to my home. The appraiser doesn't know what I'm going to say until I say it. Even if I went to the informal hearing, I have the right to add more evidence. So you can go and practice having a conversation, and then you can ask them, what else should I have brought? They can say, well, maybe, and then you can show up and say, well, as the appraiser so kindly told me, I brought some more. See? We're showing nothing but love and respect. We're making it easy for the panel to stay awake. We're showing honor to the appraiser, and we're respecting their ignorance. They've never seen all this information. So now, while we're on that roll, while we feel that momentum of information they didn't have, we don't stop there. Sometimes we pull out of that house and we say, from God's view, guess what's behind me? A commercial lot. And while nothing's built there to cause me to have concerns over traffic or noise, because they haven't built the latest bar or business, but they're not keeping up with it. So is that a mosquito farm? Because it's not a green belt. And some of our green belts are no better than mosquito farms if we catch them on the right day. But what's really interesting about this is that in this lot that I just showed you a picture of connects to the back of this house to 281. I'm no criminal, but if I was, this is the one I want to break into. Because by the time I come out that back and haul across 281, I'll be 10 minutes down the road when I wave at the sheriff coming the other direction. Right? Because he's trying to get to the front door through the cul-de-sac. So as realtors, cul-de-sac, great neighborhood, right? Quiet, but we're not selling our home. We're discounting the location, the possibility. So, now we back out again, we re-emphasize that the fence needs some work, and they always will tell you, well, we don't consider fences. I don't know about you, sir, but I think when we are advising our clients, if you had a nice, wrought iron fence, that might go a long way. If you have a privacy fence, it would be nice if you sustain it. So I don't dignify every negative thing that comes out of the appraiser's mouth when they feel like Rocky and we're just beating them up for 14 rounds. You see how we got ahead of them? You now know they have 9,000 accounts per appraiser. You now know they don't know anything about your house. And you now know how to make a presentation that even something as boring as a rectangle inside of a pie-shaped lot, I could argue that, if I was selling the home, I'd say, look, here's some area for the kids to play, put the barbecue pit over there, keep them apart by putting a bunch of flowers in there so it's a good view from the back. No, that's not what I see when I'm going to the government. I said, look, how inefficient that is, all that wasted land, and I've got to keep track of it. But you know that I couldn't build into that corner or build into that corner, so here you are, exaggerating the value of my lot. I've had people tell me, and I've got a drainage easement running across the back. I think I know somebody that is, right? So that is an example of where I'm turning the conversation around to the point that I make fun. I shouldn't say I'm learning with Mr. Cifuentes. He said, look, danger, Will Robinson. Look, Mom, no rails. Because look at the incline that he has to come out of. He was the last one out of his neighborhood after snow hit. Because he didn't have a car with ski slopes, right? I mean, instead he says, but look at my neighbors, flat approach. They don't have the problem I've got. Now when he bought it, he probably thought he was high on the hill. But that's not the argument we're making. So you're probably at this point asking, well, Mike, what about the roofing? What about the waterproofing? What about the drainage issues? What about the foundations? I've got to give a shout out to the Rivettas because they came to me and they said, Mike, we just bought the house. And we didn't know that there was a problem with the sewer lines that were in the yard. Well, who'd you buy it from? Well, the person had died, so the person that sold it hadn't been to the house. They didn't even have the utilities on it. If they didn't have the utilities on, then no wonder you didn't know the water heater didn't work. So no wonder, even in the year you bought it, we can say, because they have enough humility, we made a mistake. We wish we had known. Okay? And so you might have some ideas. You might talk about heating and AC system. If I'm in Anascosa, I tell everybody the chief appraiser loves plumbing. She actually gave a presentation, and she talked about how the plumbing in her home, her brand new home, was a certain brand, and it was no longer, it was obsolete, they had to rip it all out. So I'm like, oh, that's her sweet spot. Oh, yes. And this is the chief appraiser who's been sued by the county commissioner because he thinks that she's just so over the top and trying to keep values up. So all your recommendations are welcome. I'm not putting limits on your creativity. I was in a neighborhood in Austin, a beautiful neighborhood, and they said, but our Wi-Fi in some of the areas is terrible. I don't know, throw it out there. Oh, the solar panels don't work, but they're an obstacle because, you know, I can't take them off the roof because I'm still paying for them. There's no limit to what you might say, but you don't go into bragging about your home, because where's your home? It's where your heart is. We're not talking about your heart, we're talking about your house. So distance yourself. If you need some help, turn to your spouse and say, honey, what would you want me to do to the house if I could make it the castle that we intended to be? I promise you she'll give you good advice, okay? So what are our do's and don'ts? Do be polite and pleasant. I know the temptation's there to talk about Biden or Trump or you know, the dog has a headache. Well, maybe you can tell about the dog. That one goes over. But don't talk politics. Don't talk religion. Now, I don't mind if they see my X bracelet. I love you as I love myself. Don't vote for me. I still have to love you, so get over it. You know, because that is how we get their respect, because we're showing respect. But we don't have to go first. So when we're in front of the panel, the first thing the chairman's going to say after we start the hearing is, would you like to go first? And what are you going to say? No, thank you. And if it's a lady, you're going to say, no, my mother taught me better. Ladies first. Seriously, this is what I say. And so, why? Because I already know what they're going to say. And even if you're tempted, as some of us are, I'm going to pick on my friends and Revettas, even if you're tempted, then hit mute and make notes. So the Revettas and I had to deal with the panel and the chair, and she was so anxious, she wanted to, you know, I said, okay, fine, I'll even mute you. Now go ahead. Let me. So there was a lot of angst. We were anxious because they're going to do this hearing in 15 minutes. This is the drive-through justice system that's been created. So you're going to listen to them for 3 minutes or 4. They're going to say some things that really irritate you. Then you're going to have 3 or 4 minutes to do what we just did in what I took probably at least 7 or 8 minutes, maybe 5, you know, at best. And then they're going to impeach, they're going to try and critique, they're going to try and say why what we said wasn't relevant, why it shouldn't count. Or they're going to maybe be sympathetic, and they're going to maybe make us an offer. And if they do, I say don't accept the appraiser's offer. Why? Because if you accept the appraiser's offer, then the chair goes, well, if you accept his offer, then we'll consider the hearing closed and we'll be done. But if you say no thank you, after you've gone back and forth and you've had the last say. Because remember, they went first, made their presentation, you made your presentation, they rebutted, they turned to you and say, do you have any other comments? Or do you want to accept their offer if they've made you an offer? Say no thank you, and I'd ask that the panel please give more consideration to and have your closing, you know, your best argument. Because you're prepared to present facts and images. So, if you remember nothing else, do you have any golfers in the room? Right? Okay, you. So you know that the greatest golf psychologist in the world, when he had the best players, he told them, keep your peace, do not become attached to the final score, you know, commit to the process, and wait for the ruling. The temptation is to get ahead of ourselves, right? To say, hey, I'm going to go out and shoot the score. But the best players in the world were taught, you take one shot at a time, one step at a time. So you commit to the process of presenting and appealing, because you know it's 3 steps. What's 3 steps? I've only covered 2. Informal conversation or hearing, formal presentation or hearing. But because you allow the panel to rule, you now have 60 days to then consider whether you want to appeal their ruling by arbitration. Now, I am so blessed to be able to share this with you. Because in Atascosa, there was only 2 arbitrations out of 40,000 accounts. In Wilson County, there was only 3 arbitrations out of 40,000 accounts. And then, thanks to the chief appraiser of Bear County, he said, Mike, you're giving out all this information. You should be an arbitrator. Since you're not trying to get people to hire you. So, by God's humor, I got this email, because they're listening to us on our phones, and it said, do you want to be an arbitrator or take the CE course? So I said, wow, God must be talking to me. I'll go to this course, I'll give up 3 days of my life, and I'll get 30 hours of continuing education, not only for my real estate license, I got 30 hours for my CPA license. For 30 hours, I got 60. And then God really he's never done with me. The presenter, the educator said, all the money you paid for the tuition, except for covering my cost of overnight, is going to a seminary. Can't make this stuff up. So I felt really good about it. Except I realized I don't want to be on the registry picking winners and losers between you and the government. I want to be with the winners. So I said, thank you, Mr. Amiskita. Great idea. I know about arbitration. I know that the media is misleading us. And you please, if anybody knows in the written, print, radio, if you know Trey Ware, you call them and tell them you learned something tonight. Because I'm really sick and tired of listening to the county last week, Marilyn Moritz. Nice lady. I'm sure she's a sweetheart. But this is what he does. This year values are real high. And what do you think? And they put, Joe Taxpayer. Yes, I'm going to protest. And then they go to Mr. Amiskita and he says, well, I've been doing this for 18 years and the values are rather high. But if you'll bring your facts and evidence and images, we'll do our best to lower the value. And then she concludes, and if you still disagree, you could file a lawsuit. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not your alternative. You don't have to turn to a lawyer. You don't have to turn to a lawyer. You don't have to justify $2,000 or $2,500 when you could go to arbitration, and we're going to talk about it. Why is the difference not arbitrary? Because the appraiser's biased and overworked. And the panel of your peers can fog a mirror and are told not to fall asleep. So the arbitrator, the class I went to, they said, you know what, there's only 200 of y'all in the state. I said, why so few? Because they used to not have standards, and there were 1,600. Then they said, we'd like you to raise the standard, maybe have a real estate license, what a concept. Maybe be a lawyer, an accountant, something. And 1,600 went to 200. There's only 200 arbitrators in the state. And they don't work for the government. They are like this 200, and all they do is just rotate the assignment of cases. So you're arbitrator 1 and 2 and 3. And you can even insist that you don't want the arbitrator from Bear County. For those of you that feel like, well, I kind of live in an affluent neighborhood. I don't want somebody to say, well, I'm in Alamo Heights. I'm in what, I'm jealous of you because you're in St. Mark's Parish. But whatever it is, sometimes I say, I'd rather have somebody from Beaumont, anywhere but in Bear County. I don't want them to feel well discriminated against because we're talking about a $500,000 home. But these arbitrators have this going for them. They're certified, educated, they're independent of government bias. So let's go back to Mr. Cifuentes. He started at 320. That was the notice of value he received. The appraiser, in front of the panel, as those pictures were rolling, I could just see the look on his face. It's like, I'm prepared to offer him 300. And there I was. Mr. Cifuentes looks at me, because they asked him, are you going to accept the offer? And I'm behind literally the computer, and picture going, and he was wise. He turned and he looked at his wife. I mean, what wisdom. He looks at her. And of course, she looks at him like, it was your idea to do this. She does this. He looks back at me. I'm still doing this. And fortunately, he could read universal language of no, night, whatever, any language. He said, no, thank you. I'll let the panel rule. I said, oh, great. We trained him. So the panel said the hearing's closed. We're going to rule, and they discussing among themselves in front of you that, it's not a secret, it's not by, piece of paper, it's not a game show. They go, well, I think 290. You go, I think 290. Well, I was thinking 300. Well, the 290s have it. Okay, you win the game. You got the 290. We gave you an extra 10 grand because you listened to Mike when he said, don't do it. But it wasn't to get just the extra 10 grand. It was to get the right to appeal through arbitration. So literally, Mr. Cifuentes, as soon as we closed the book, he goes, that was great. What else can we do? I was like, oh my goodness, I'm creating a monster. Isn't it enough you've saved $800-900? So I said, well, if you really insist, Mr. Cifuentes, I learned about this game, this appeal process called arbitration, but that's when you're going to have to give them a value. It's going to be another one-page form, about as complicated as what you filled out today, and you have to tell them, I think it's, in his case, 240. Now, why is that critical, what you put here? It's because this 240, when compared to the 290, creates a midpoint of 265. Now, what's significant about the midpoint? The midpoint is like a tug of war. So you're over there on that side of the creek, and I'm on this side. I don't have to drag you through the creek to win. I just have to get you into the creek, right? So the creek is the midpoint. In the math of arbitration, 265 is the midpoint. If the arbitrator says 264,999, guess what? You win the case. You may not have gotten your 240, but what you did get was the county had to pay the fee. The county finally has something at risk. So sometimes I've had cases where they settle because they're like, yeah, that Mr. Cifuentes, I don't want to go in front of an educated arbitrator just because they were falling asleep. He's going to get something. But this case, they wanted to roll the dice. So we rolled the dice. They didn't want to plea bargain, if you will. And he got his value down to 260 by an educated arbitrator. So he wins at 260. He's lowered his value from 320 to 290, from 290 to 260. Congratulations. The county had to pay the arbitrator's fee. They refund the balance of the deposit of 450, of the 400 from the 450. The state council only get $50 for administering the assignment, but he wins taxes, and he won what? He won the arbitration fee back. He got it refunded. Why? Because Mr. Cifuentes had evidence that was clear and convincing. It was relevant. It was reliable. Because he was a qualified witness. He knew his property better than anybody. And he followed our advice by flexing to the social style of the panel, and rather the arbitrator. That's Mr. Cifuentes. Now, if his image doesn't inspire you, then I don't know what other image I can put up there, but I've got one in the crowd. And I'm going to, with your permission, I'm going to tell a little bit of the story. So the Rivettas came to me, and thank you, because it's all public knowledge, so they're not really making a confession here. They bought a home for $240. And in that year, they bought the home for $240. They said, we didn't know there were these problems. We bought it out in the state, and blah, blah, blah. And so I said, well, let's let's protest. I don't know how to get it below 240 when you bought it for 240, but God has a plan. So we went, and unfortunately, Mrs. Rivera was sick, so at the formal, she wasn't available. So yeah, Thomas and I, we did our best, right? But maybe they didn't like his beard. I don't know. I don't think we're on video, but we didn't succeed. The panel was asleep at the wheel, drinking the same Kool-Aid, eating the same tacos. They said, no, the appraiser's genius, it's 240. Ms. Rivera had a little bit of a fit. What? I should have been there. I'm sorry. You'll be feeling well that day. But let's go to arbitration. So, it's the principle of the thing. So we put down our 450. We went to the arbitration. And I'll summarize it to say that my favorite point in the whole thing was to say, well, she's losing her eyesight. And he's getting older. I said, so I'd like to say that this is the blind leading the blind leading the blind. Because when we were done with our presentation, the arbitrator ruled from 240 to 180. Glory be to God was the words out of her mouth. Because she didn't think. She said, I said 180. I thought maybe we get to 190 or 200 or 210. They gave us everything we asked for. I didn't know I was supposed to apologize. Well, I'm glad you're not saying, well, why didn't you say 160, Mike? So they were at least appreciative. And I thought it was a miracle, but it's not the only time that I've had this happen. I can go on and tell you more stories, but I want to emphasize the facts of this story. If Mr. Cifuentes, who had not protested the previous 3 years, 302, 307, 310, and those problems didn't happen in the year 2020. But in 2020, if he had stopped at the 290, he still would have been advantaged, right? He still saved $800. This is what was offered to him. What the ruling was. His his assessed value based on this cap on your homestead can only go up 10%. So if you're not following the quick math, 290 plus 110% limits the value for tax purposes to 319. This is going to be a bugaboo this year more than ever. Because the government that year said 290 is now worth 361. They jacked his value up. So he was benefited because the increase was capped by what they call the homestead. So his market value went up by $71,000, notwithstanding the fact that they didn't know whether you replace the carpet, fix the floor, replace windows, all those things are sure. They didn't even care. They just went ahead and jacked it up there. How arbitrary is that? Pardon the expression. But because by the grace of God, and Christian, he said, Mike, we're going to go to arbitration. He went to arbitration. He got the value down to 260. So what happened in 2021? Even though they said it was worth 361, for homestead purposes, it could only go up to 286. So he won, and then he won again. Now, that's why the system's broken. Because they created a system that then encourages these values to go up, because they want us all to believe that, hey, we protect your homestead with a 10% cap. Now, if you don't know the rule of 72, if your homestead goes up 10% every year, in 7.2 years, your taxes will double in value. I know for some of us, we got a little bit of a freeze because we're over 65, disabled vets perhaps, but that's not good. Not for a conservative legislature. But so let's go back step by step, because I promised I'd get you done. I'm taking too long. I'm going to take questions. You're going to file your protest. You're going to request the evidence package. You're going to attend the informal hearing, otherwise what I call a conversation. Please don't put any pressure on yourself. Like, oh my goodness. I said, just go. Have a good time. If you're at home, pour yourself a glass of wine. And then let them tell you what they sent you. And then practice on it. Give them, give them a little bit. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? And even if you think that you could have done better, then ask them, respect them. What could I have done better? Right? I'm your brother in Christ. Then let them do this. I love the whiplash. No, it's okay. I literally had to tell one of them, you can take off your mask. And not because we were together, because he was on a video. I said, you can take it off, really. My virus will not project to the screen. And I was sitting next to the doctor. No, I'm not telling you to take off your mask. No, I don't mean to be disrespectful. I was saying literally that was kind of funny. I'm next to the doctor. He's at the Berlanga County Hospital. He's bringing me the risk of virus. But the man wearing the mask is the man on the screen. I'm like, literally, take it off. You look like a bank robber. So attend the informal, then follow up. Sometimes, if you were the appraiser and you had said, well, if you would have just brought me blah, 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 I've actually been here for 20 years. They gave me a little more authority than the young one over there. And, I kind of like, he said, Mike, if you bring that back before the formal, maybe I could lower it to where you need it to be. But if not, you re-prepare and attend the formal, and then you have 60 days after you get the ruling to decide if you want to request arbitration. Do not, unless the property is more than $500,000, I cannot recommend that you file a lawsuit. I can go on and on about cases. My favorite one right now is an apartment complex near North Shore Mall that's basically a boarding house. This place has so much personnel because it's assisted living, but they call it an apartment complex. So the first year, that same company I told you about at the beginning, Ryan Company, went to the informal. They got it down from $3.3 million to $3.1 million, and then they filed a lawsuit. They said, here, if you want to do any further, call this law firm. Law firm, took it, and now they had to pay them a fee. And the following year, before the lawsuit was ever settled, they went through the same process. They got it down to 3.1. And I said, well, what about arbitration? And they looked at me like I said a curse word. I said, I'll represent you. You don't need to give me a retainer. Let's go to arbitration. We went to arbitration. I made my case. They lowered it from 3.1 to $2 million. That isn't the end of the story. The following year, they jacked it right back up, 3.3 million. They went back through the process, went down to 3.1 again. This time we went to arbitration, and this time the arbitrator, I messed up. I forgot to check the box that said, I don't want one from Bear County. So God had a sense of humor. He's so funny. Guess who the arbitrator was? The former chief appraiser of Bear County. Now I'm thinking, I've run out of all my, bingo cards. This is a losing case, right? He knows all the people at the county. He probably still drinks their Kool-Aid. Guess what? He gave us $2 million again. I didn't know if I was supposed to apologize because I did it 2 years in a row. The lawsuit is still going on. So again, my friend, Mr. Bordardo owns a Mexican restaurant named Torreon. Now, if you haven't been on Culebra, maybe you just have to go to the west side a little bit on the way from Culebra, I-10 rather, to St. Mary's University. Believe it or not, when we asked for the comps, they showed us a Chinese restaurant in Stone Oak, Cerritos in the medical center, and Laguna Madre. I don't know if you speak Spanish, but the only thing that Laguna Madre has in common with Torreon is that those are both Spanish words, but they sell seafood. These people sell Mexican food. So we went to the hearing, and they lowered it, 170 some odd thousand. And I said, oh no, we're on a roll here. We're on a roll. Because I don't know how it is that you overlook the fact that if I just Google map Mexican restaurants, I found 20 from I-10 to St. Mary's University. That's without comparing it to a lower square foot of Mama Margie's, Taco Palenque on I-10. So they lowered another $220,000 at arbitration. I mean, it's ridiculous that we don't know what I'm telling you and that the legislature doesn't want to improve the process. Remember earlier when I told you about that special panel that you can request if you're that $52 million lottery winner? That panel has to be educated. I don't know what's magical about 52 million. Why don't we start with a special panel if you're $1 million or $500,000? Oh, I know, we'll have trouble finding those people. Well, maybe we need to pay them a little more. But
Instead of the ARBs.
Michael,
yes,
you need to leave, but I just wanted to say that you all need to listen to Michael. He saved us $57,000. Get all your evidence together, get pictures, get really high bids. We got the privacy fence, we got the windows, we got full electrical redoing, we got the sewer. We had so much evidence, and it went from 240 to 180. I love Michael, he knows what he's talking about. Listen to him, and you can't go wrong.
get out of here. You're gonna think they're gonna think we paid you.
Okay, yeah,
So, but thank you, bless you.
and thank you for paying me.
I thought you said send you a bill. I thought you said for me to send you a bill. I just enjoy the joy of when she says, glory be to God. So this is Mr. Amasquita, this is Mike Berlanga, this is Mr. Garcia. He's not a very happy camper. We made an offer because his facility would only been lowered a couple $100,000 and it was a $3 million facility. Before we went to the lawsuit, they settled and they cut the value in half. That was ridiculous. I mean, it's ridiculously good for him. It's ridiculous that we had to threaten the county because you're gonna have to pay legal fees or you're gonna have to pay an arbitrator if we win. So that's the arbitration. I'm welcome to come back if we get through June and you're still not happy. We can talk all about arbitration. I'm gonna keep it succinct. You've been a great crowd. The arbitration fee deposit is $450 if your home is $500,000 or less. It's $500 if it's $500,000 or more. This is what goes to the arbitrator. So imagine if you're an arbitrator and they're gonna pay you $400 just to hear the case. Well, even if it takes you an hour to organize the information, there's exchange evidence, on the day of the hearing, it takes you an hour, I'm comfortable listening to you for half an hour or 40 minutes. And that's why the Ravennas made, I think, a better case because they had more time. It wasn't drive-through justice. So there's a fee schedule. I'll move too fast. There's a Bear County Taxpayers Association Facebook group. I want us all to fellowship there, share our misery, share our successes. I want us to kind of have a little camaraderie. You don't know who's going to be attracted to that, but will benefit from that. I'll close with this. San Antonio, Austin, remember Apollo 13, Houston, we have a problem? No, we all have a problem. We all have a problem. For that reason, I'll put in my own plug. I am seeking to be on the ballot as an independent candidate, not as a Republican, not as a Democrat, not to take anything away from either of those. I was endorsed by the governor when I ran for state comptroller, for state representative. I can tell you, I have run against Carlos Uresti. God bless him. He's got some issues now that, I'm here, I'm free to share this information. I run against Albert. I don't think this is a Democrat-Republican conversation. I don't think this is a Christian, Jewish, Muslim conversation. I think this is a problem that the comptroller, who can't even tell you with a form, other than in Bear County, thanks to Mike Amosquita, allows you to request the evidence. He also won't tell you that he's issuing property value studies that put pressure on the school districts to raise the values. Because if we can collect more school district taxes, then the state doesn't have to pay as much. And that's the solution to the Da Vinci Code. But I won't dwell on that because I want to take questions. So, questions? Yes, sir.
How long does it usually take them to provide you the evidence they're gonna use against you?
As soon as you make your request, I think they've even said the hearings won't start till June 6th. So I can't tell you this year, because, it varies with as he said, as Mike Amosquita is predicting, 160,000 protests. Last year was 120,000. So they're like taking these protests in like a hose, a fire hose. But whenever they give it to you, then they can't schedule your formal hearing for 2 weeks. I mean, so you have at least 14 days.
Once it is provided.
Once it's provided, you've got 2 weeks lead time. And if you don't, get on the phone. Yeah, send an email, copy me, and let's make sure. Mr. Amosquita says, call his staff, he says, look, treat these people like they were his mother, and he loves his mother. So the customer service is pretty good. That's why I've distinguished the ARB panel from the appraiser. But as far as, did you get the evidence? Oh, they're on top of it. And once they give it to you, if you know, well, wait a minute, my hearing's next week.
But usually their evidence always on the high end.
Well, yes, or it's just inaccurate, but it supports their case. Whether it's on the high end or not is subjective.
But
But
shotgun effect, shoot in the air, I'm gonna hit some of them birds.
that's right, that's right.
Do they send it via email or mail?
They can send it via email, and they can send it in hard copy. It's at your discretion.
Well, it's already been allegedly done by the appraiser, correct?
Yes,
So they should have it when you request it, right then?
yes,
It should be on their screen.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. You won't, I don't think that's where you're gonna have a problem.
And isn't that what they send you?
You're going to get the evidence if you request it. If you just check that red box, okay? You have to check the red box. You have to check that red box. I'll show you again.
Now, is that on just Bear County or all counties?
All counties in the state of Texas are subject to this law. This is the only county that has it in red. This is what you're like. It's in red. I tell people either they think we are the dumbest county or we are the friendliest county. I'm not sure which. It's a little bit of both. Check the box, get the evidence. Okay?
Yes, sir. At the very beginning, you told us that you could get a copy of your.
Absolutely. Do we have your email address? Did everybody sign up with an email address?
I'll pass it around.
We're gonna circulate a piece of paper and you can give us your email and we'll make sure you get it. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, two questions. The first ones are the storage sheds, patio covers, and decks attachable.
Anything that's an improvement to the property, but that doesn't mean that it's as valuable as climate-controlled space. And that shed, they don't know whether it's got an air conditioner in it or whether it could even, store rabbits.
Okay, so and the other one is like, if you already have a meeting that we're not gonna be in the country, let's say that it
Mhm.
first week of June, or if you get COVID and you
Right.
cannot go, what happens if you take the appointment?
You're allowed as a homeowner at least one reschedule.
Okay.
Okay. That's by state law. Okay?
But I need to reschedule before, or what?
Well, you-
When accident happened, and I didn't attend, can I still reschedule?
Well, generally speaking, you have to just explain it to them that you were out of the country when the mail came in. But that's why I'd ask you to communicate with them by email, and then you're gonna know that they said, this is your hearing date, and then you'll respond and say, "I respectfully reschedule if I could," so that you're prepared, okay? Yes, sir.
So, just essentially take a picture of that form, fill it out, take a picture with your phone,
attach it to an email, send it to them,
Yes, sir.
then they got it, they
Yes.
know they got it, don't mail it.
That's my preference, I mean, and I'm digitally challenged.
Yeah.
But if
Me
you
too,
could
I
take-
think I can do that.
I think you can do it too, and for those who are truly old school, all I'm saying is just don't regular mail it. At least certain,
By mail.
so that you've got evidence that you sent it. I mean, they've got 160,000
They
cases.
typically respond when they get the email right away, say, we got your email. or-
Yes, typically, it's almost instantaneous as we get closer to the deadline. Okay, but I mean, give them a day before you rattle the cage. Okay, well, I'm trying to stay ahead of you.
What is the email address for?
protest@bcad.org. Protest. I used to be CS for customer service. We learned this week that, oh no, they're all sitting in CS because we're gonna move them over to protest.
Say it again one more time.
Protest, PROTEST @bcad.org. Barrett County Appraisal District.org. Yes, sir.
Why don't you say not to be the first one, so.
Are you married? Okay. Have you found that you win the argument better if you let her go first and then just agree with her? No, geez, I'm just kidding. I don't know your mind. But I would suggest, seriously, I would suggest that they go first.
They have to prevent.
They go first. You know what they're gonna say, right? So now, then you go second. Then they say, well, you know, we don't care that he wears blue and he's got glasses or whatever. We're not gonna give it just, here, let me, so then you,
I misunderstood. I thought out of these 10 people, do you want to go first, Darrell?
oh, I'm sorry, no, I'm talking about being in line. I'm talking about letting the appraiser go first, because you want to have the last say. You get the last say when you said, no, thank you. Mr. Cifuentes said, no, I'm not gonna take that 300, and I'd like you to consider blah, 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 blah. So you got that last dig in. But I know it wasn't your question, but now I just want to reemphasize, because I think it's real important. But like Mrs. Rivera, who couldn't even stay around because she had to go to a Bible study, I mean, she wanted to, like, just back off. Yes, ma'am.
I'm a little concerned because last year I protested for the first time. I didn't have all this knowledge. So I took pictures and I wrote down what I thought. They came back and they shaved off a couple of thousand. And I took it. So now I'm going to protest again. I'm going to protest again. And I kind of shoot myself in the foot because I undervalued probably what I could have done.
No, it's like deer season. Every year we're the deer, right? You know, and they're gonna come after us. Every year stands on its own. If your house is burned down, what would we be talking about? Land and slab. Doesn't matter what happened the year before. If you had added an addition, doesn't matter what we talked about the year before. Every year stands on its own. Okay? So you're good. And don't hesitate to say, you know, last year, if they say, well, last year you protested, they're trying to, you say, yeah, and I know, and I didn't know what I was doing. I did a terrible job. Be self-deprecating, okay? Yes, sir.
Living in a mature neighborhood, there hasn't been an unimproved lot sale for years, and yet they increase the value of a lot.
So that's a common myth, and that is that they can separate the cake from the icing. I'm gonna get to that because I appreciate that you prompted me. Well, I'll tell you this much. My brother, who's president of Texas Homes, was the past president of the Builders Association. He creates neighborhoods. And in those neighborhoods, you know, we learned that, you know, land, when you're creating a neighborhood and you're putting in the streets and the curbs and the utilities, those developers are building lots, finished lots, to build on or to sell to builders with the expectation that the land cost shouldn't be more than about 20% of the overall value. You don't go putting a $100,000 home and a $100,000 lot. Is that a fair statement? It's generally, in my experience, and I've developed some property myself, you know, if I've got a $100,000 lot, I should have a $500,000 home. It works in reverse the same way. There are some unique infill neighborhoods, but for the most part, that's what I would respond. They can't separate the icing from the cake, but they attempt to because more of us are becoming more educated to making a better case for our property condition. So they're making that argument that, you know, here's a $300,000 home, but it's a $100,000 lot. I said, seriously, that land should be worth more than $60,000. Sometimes I get them to go down the value of the overall but then they don't want to mess with the land. It's gained, I don't like it, but I want that panel to hear, there's no way that land should be more than 20% of the total value. Get to dig in at the very least. Maybe the arbitrator will listen if we have to go that far. But you make an excellent question and an excellent point, because my brother, myself, in the business of creating lots, we don't create $100,000 lots to build in $200,000 neighborhoods. That's not how the business works. But they're not educated, and the appraiser's using an argument, oh, well, mass appraisal, right? So don't let them suck you into it without having a comeback. Your comeback should be, land should be no more than 20% of the total. Yes, sir.
Is there any way to know if your neighbors are protesting? Is there any kind of listing that, so I just think a lot of people don't protest. And if other people that protest, that may give you some ammunition as well.
Yes, it's not easily done, but it's easily done, it's just not that simple. The Bexar County Appraisal District website is an incredibly friendly website. You can go in there and ask by address, but that's kind of finicky. Property ID number, you can get to your property. You can hit view map. Hit view map, then you can drag that or move the mouse to the property that you want to look at, and you click on that. Then it comes up. As soon as you file a protest on that form, or if they did it, it's going to say status, open protest. You say, so if you want to check on your neighbors and do the neighborly thing, say, hey, listen, I see you're protesting, why don't we get together and compare notes? Now, your house may be in lesser condition, better condition, but that's why whether you're fellowshipping countywide or you're fellowshipping in the neighborhood, you can find out what their properties are valued at as we speak. You can click, and you can check it out. And you're going to need to, some of you are going to need to put together what I call a proximity map. I didn't have an example of that, but I kind of did, because Mr. Cifuentes is on the edge of his neighborhood. But if they're comparing Mr. Cifuentes to properties on the inside, and they're saying that those properties are worth as much, you say, well, they've got quiet neighbors. I don't. I got 281. Okay, so you can learn a lot about your neighbors. Just a second, I think. Yes, yes, ma'am. Hold on. No, ladies first. He's mine.
So I called this because I received my notice, and I know the notice and all the readings right now. So what I did ask, she said, well, I'll forward you another one. I did receive it. But in the time when we were having the conversation, I said, she said, do you plan to vote this? I said, absolutely. And I said, because my neighbors are telling me what they're taxing on this. And so she said, well, don't forget to go and get all your evidence. In the conversation, unless I heard you correctly, you said, do not go ahead and mail in that evidence to them?
You don't need to mail it in. What you need to do is request the evidence. She was referring to this. I'm almost positive what you might have misheard is she was saying, are you planning on protesting? You said yes. And then she said, be sure and ask for the evidence.
Okay, but she said, do you have any evidence of
Well,
property?
and you said not at this time.
I said, not at this time. I said, but I will go and take photos and whatever. She said, make sure that you mail that in with your protest letter.
That's not necessary. She's just baiting you.
Right, and well, you're saying,
It's not,
do not send it in.
well, why?
But why?
Why? You're gonna have an informal hearing when you're person to person. Now, here's my stuff. And then what do? You compliment. This is what I've got so far. This is all the time I've had. But I know my formal hearing is in a week. Would you recommend anything? You don't know if you're gonna see that appraiser again. Now that appraiser may feel like you're the only one out of this group of protesters that treated him with some respect, showed that he gave you advice, you followed the advice. I mean, it just doesn't hurt to be honeys to the bees. Hold on, yes, ma'am.
To follow on her, I had virtual last year on the protest, and
By virtual, do you mean video?
Zoom.
Okay.
It really wasn't Zoom. I mean, I wasn't watching it on the screen.
Mhm.
It was just voice, virtual.
Mhm.
So they had asked also if I had any photos or anything, I needed to have provided that 2 weeks in advance.
Well, they misled you, because I've been providing it about a day in advance, because I'm respecting the administrator. If this lady was the administrator, and she's got hundreds of stuff coming in, I've actually been kind of rude, to be honest with you, and that's not intentional. I mean, sometimes it's like, but then before you go to sleep the night before, at least when you, as the appraiser or administrator, wake up in the morning, you're already going, okay, that goes into this file. And then at 10 o'clock hearing, so, don't show up at 9:45 to the formal hearing, trying to jam it through her, who's then got to assign it to the panel. See, because it doesn't go directly to the panel. The panel is designated literally on the day. You won't know if it is panel A or panel B, and there's about 13 panels maybe. So you won't know what panel you got until the day of the hearing. So she's the traffic controller of all information. Show a little courtesy. So when they said 2 weeks, that's an exaggeration.
This was the informal, and I go for the informal, I do not want to go to the formal, I've been to the formal before, I do not want to face those people, they just are automatically just.
Well, but you now know why.
They're idiots.
You now know why. But if you want someone to hold your hand, let me know. And if it fits my schedule, I'll sit there and, I'm your sister, I'm your brother. And so, but for them to tell you you have to give it 2 weeks before the informal, never heard that. That is not, literally, the informal hearing is just a courtesy that enables them to funnel down from 160,000 requests. Mr. Amosquita, I don't know where he's getting his math. I love Mr. Amosquita. Okay, first of all, not because we're golfing buddies, but he's impacted my life, which has benefited somebody else. Mr. Amosquita says on tape, he says, "Oh, we settled 80 or 90% of these in informal." Well, if that's how he settled it, well then that's reason enough to go to formal. And I extend the invitation, please, don't be afraid. Okay, I mean, we're Christians, right? And what are we told? Do not fear. Well, fear stands for false evidence that appears real. Yes, they were rude, but I'd rather have somebody else there with you on the phone, and then I'll bet you they won't be as rude. I don't care if it's a brother or a mother or a friend, but if that's what you experienced, they were just being rude and condescending, and that does occasionally happen.
So instead of submitting any photos or anything of that matter, or bids or anything like that, I chose to just protest based on the comps only.
Right.
And that's what I did. And I wore her down. 15 minutes, I wore her down, and I got it all the way.
Well, congratulations, because you won on let's see, you beat her mass appraisal with some market data, but many people benefit from going a little bit better. You may have an immaculate home, you don't feel the need to, and if you do have an immaculate home, if you've already raised from Corian to Granite, then fine. Don't show off the house, right? You're not selling it, so you don't have to show off that you got Pella windows. You don't have to show off that you got this incredible, hot tub or whatever. But for most of the people, unless they have a new home, you got this as your Joker's wild card. They don't know those things until you say it.
On
Yes.
the same information that you're giving me right now, so I go to the formal, I present then my presentation, pictures and everything,
Right.
and I don't agree with the formal. If they ask to take a copy of what I'm already giving it, because now I'm moving on and I am requesting to go to the formal. Do I?
You mean at the informal or the formal?
Okay, the informal, that I don't agree with what they're giving me.
Yeah.
But I've gone ahead and shown them the pictures and everything.
That's fine if they
ask
take
for a
it.
copy?
That's fine.
Okay.
They can put it in the file,
Okay.
but you're gonna start fresh. You're gonna start with everything that you want. You can bring it, you can bring more. Yes, sir.
I had gone, not recently, but when you actually go talk to them, I
Right.
went and talked to one of the informals.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking, and they were like, yeah, I can't offer more than 10 or 15%, that's it.
It's like a car sales environment.
Yeah.
They use the youngest, there you go, informal hearing. Let's go through this. They're required to be offered by state law. They're generally staffed by the least experienced, but friendliest staff. These are nice people. Sometimes they've only been doing this a year or two. They're not, they're not always the person that's going to show up at the formal. But, consider it to be a warm-up. I know most of you have gone to informals and you thought, well, they didn't do anything, so I'm not going to get any better. And now you may think I discouraged you because these people are not educated, but that doesn't mean you can't relate to them. Because they may have the same issues that she had, and they may give you the benefit of the doubt that the appraiser didn't. There's another question up here. Used to, you've been waiting so patiently.
It's very intimidating. I've been there, I've done it, you know, it's 4 against 1. And so you start questioning yourself if you're right. And because these guys, the appraiser and all that, supposedly know what they're doing.
No, not anymore. I just got finished telling you, this is the gospel according to Michael.
When I went to a formal, I asked them, what are your qualifications for this? None of them had any work, never worked on a house, never sold a house. I'm like, and you guys are making decisions on people's residence?
Right here. Yeah, we all agree, there's no disagreement. So why are we intimidated or fearful of people that we know? Worst case is they're going to agree with the appraiser. Worst case.
He's just as bad.
I understand, but that's worst case. And that's why best case is you relate to them, they throw you a bone, and if they throw you a bone, then you now have 60 days to say, you know what, they missed the whole mark. Mr. C. Plaintiff said, they missed the whole mark, it should have been 240. You got it down to 260. But
The point is don't give up.
thank you, don't give up,
Don't give up.
right?
That's what you're telling us here. You go as far as you can.
If
It's tough. And while we get it in the mail, we got a paper saying, oh, this company will go, say, you know, all this money for 25%.
Right, and what I'm saying is you don't have to hire somebody if you follow these methodology. But you can always break down and say, you know, I want to go to arbitration, but I just don't know how to organize it. Now, maybe that's what it is. Well, then maybe you hire somebody. But you don't have to. And I don't want to dump on a company that does this, but I've heard of some that I will name my friend even. You know, he's a lawyer, and he said, you know, Mike, I told him last year, I said, look, you know, are you going to go to the formal? Because he started reporting commercial cases to me. He says, I've never been to the formal. He says, I go in there with a stack, like I'm dealing with speeding tickets. And I said, you don't go to the formal? He says, no. I mean, I can settle 20 of them at one time if I say, listen, you know, Mr. Appraiser, we can settle 20 cases right now. I'm going to go 10% across the board. So I said, well, on this case, I'm going to go to formal. And then when we're unsatisfied formal, I'm going to go to arbitration. I'm teaching the attorney the definition of arbitration as it relates to property taxes. Okay? So I'm not a big fan, not saying that they don't offer a service, but they don't offer a personalized empowerment that you now should feel. Somebody else, yes, sir.
Okay, so if I've got this right, the informal hearing is just conversational. I don't provide any of my evidence.
You're welcome to,
But I don't have to.
you don't have to. You can just say, could you explain to me again what you sent me? You know, or if they sent you the evidence.
Right.
We requested they sent. So you sit down and say, hey, could you show me? And then even if you offer up comments or a little bit of evidence, then you say, well, could you tell me what else I should bring?
Right.
So I'm not saying don't give them anything. I'm saying you're not limited to what you give them at the informal. When we go from the informal hearing or conversation to the formal, we have another 7 days usually to get ready based on what I've said.
And how soon do I is the formal done in person and I have to take the documents with me, or do I have to?
You can still submit that by email. Email, not online. I hate to use that expression. I mean, email is on, no, but I have to distinguish it for some people who say, oh, he's saying protest online and it's just data to data. No, because then they don't get to hear your voice. They don't get to feel sympathetic to you if they like you. But so you send it by email, the evidence that you want to go through at the formal. And you send it at least the night before.
Okay.
Okay? Yes, ma'am.
But just to get something clear, going to the formal is gonna cost you $450.
No. The informal is free, required by law, it's a conversation. The formal is free, it just requires you to endure 3 people who aren't educated. Okay? And then from there, if you want to appeal that ruling, you have 60 days to decide if you want to gamble a deposit that is used to pay the arbitrator only if you lose. Because if you win, they're gonna refund everything but $50. Okay?
So,
Step 1 is free, step 2 is free, and step 3 is when we can visit, okay? Yes, ma'am.
My question is way out in left field. I'm no longer a homeowner, I'm a tenant. The landlord lives in Austin. So as far as, and it's a house, my husband and I are renting a house. So as far as if this whole situation is concerned, aside from the tenants, either encouraging their landlords to,
Ask them if they'll appoint you as the agent.
okay,
Because if I was the landlord, and you feel like, well, he's in Austin, doesn't really care, he thinks everything's going up in Austin, he thinks the same thing's probably happening at San Antonio, he's glad it's going up because he hopes to sell it someday. Well, you know the property condition better than he does, you live there. You say, listen, would you appoint me as the agent, let me see if I can bring it down so that you don't have to raise my rent?
thank you very much, I'm glad I asked.
I'm glad you asked.
We've been in our house for, we've been renting for 7 years. And we just received a letter from him last week that for the first time in 7 years, he's going to have to raise the rent. So, and he's using the whole property tax, as his issue. And now granted, on one hand, it's wonderful, we have not had the rent increase for 7 years. On the other hand, after what I've learned this evening, I'm realizing that the human side of all of us, especially listening to my peers here, is, do I really want to mess with this whole thing? And thank heaven he's showing us it is very doable. And also too, with what you suggested about asking him if we can be the agent, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I mean, he got this notice, and he looks at it, and if I go to Austin all the time, he's like, oh, I'm glad it finally went up in value. Glad San Antonio's catching up to Austin. And Because immediately click, click, had the information. Shame on them.
I'm wondering if I should include it. My last name's not very common, and, they were pretty bad.
They're not horrible. I'll be less polite. Yes, sir.
Well, I was curious on this thing, it says, I've got over 65, I guess, exemption. How significant is that? Is that,
Okay, so he's got an over 65 exemption. What's significant is that, and I can talk all night long about exemptions, but it varies from state to state, county to county, within the county. There's multiple taxing jurisdictions. I think we have 7 here. City, county, school, hospital district, blah, blah, river authority, I mean, any which way. So, if I understand it correctly, in your circumstances, the taxable value for school districts gets frozen at 65. Okay, so that's the best benefit of getting older. I'm 62, I don't have any children in school, so I'm a little biased, like, why not me? But I'm not a burden on the school district, but that doesn't mean that exempts you from the value going up for your school, for your city and your county and your river authority. Somebody will ask, well, the value's so high, even if I bring it down 10%, it's not gonna get below the amount that they are gonna tax me on. So why should I do it? Okay, here's my 3 reasons. One, what if you decide you want to rent it? It's no longer your homestead, right? It's no longer your homestead. It's no longer your homestead if you take it out if you stop living there, right? But you say, well, I got a low interest rate or it's paid for, I'm just gonna rent it and hold on to it, maybe I'll leave it to my children. Okay, what happens if you don't rent it, but you transfer it? You say, for estate planning purposes, I understand I can get a better share of my money from the government if I don't show that I'm living here, and I'm going to transfer the ownership to a child, or an adult child. Well, it's no longer your homestead. So you didn't protest, and now the value immediately goes to that, and all that frozen goes away. The third reason, I think, and this is my faith-based reason, is you've been told they're going to use your value and compare it to the neighbor's values. So aren't you being neighborly? If even though your value, if you bring it down, isn't going to save you taxes, but at least you know you did your best to not be used against your neighbor? Just a thought. 3 reasons. Yes, sir.
Yeah, mentioned how, when they appraised the size of the house and it just stood by the roof, I think they've done it with my roof, because when I measured thoroughly every nook and cranny inside my house, I'm coming up 400 feet short of what they say it is.
More power to you.
Do I have to get a certified appraisal done in my home? How do I?
I wouldn't say if you get a certified appraisal, but if they really want to push you, get an appraiser, but just say, I just need you to do the measurements. Or get somebody that'll just do measurements. They don't have to.
Well, I checked the guy that appraised my house. I just bought it last year, and I think that's what he did.
Okay, so did he have
He
measurements?
did that big appraisal.
But in that appraisal, you've got measurements.
He doesn't have the houses measured, the rooms measured, it's just a measurement of the roof.
The appraiser? Or the government? Or the appraiser that helped you buy the home?
The appraiser that I got from the finance company.
And he didn't measure, he didn't say your space is X?
I'll go through the papers again, there were so many papers.
Right,
I'm
not.
trying to research it, it looked like he just measured, he had some diagram, the fee, the calculations, and there was my.
Take a closer look at it, and if not, let me look at it with you, okay?
A survey of the house.
A survey would be what might indicate what the square footage is of the foundation and its relationship to the land size. But, so that may not solve the problem, but in the appraisal.
Yeah, because I'm thinking my square footage appraisal was based on what my roof covered.
Right, and it may be wrong if in fact your air conditioned space.
Two-car garage.
Right.
And 4 feet eaves that go over the front of the house.
Absolutely, absolutely. But you should be able to find that without even having to pay anything. But if you had that measured, you can ask an appraiser, well, you just measure it. If you wanted a third party, and he probably won't charge you the same, so you need to do a full-blown appraisal. Yes, ma'am.
On that note, are we being taxed only for the air conditioning? I mean,
Well, there's a value for air conditioned space, it's higher than the value for your garage, it's higher than the value for an open porch. So they're gonna try and tax everything, but there is a reduction if it's not air conditioned space versus open porch versus a patio. Yes, ma'am?
Do you, evidence that you
has a immaculate manufacturing facility, it's got barbed wire all around it. Police have even used it to do surveillance on the drug house across the way. So if you're suggesting that, hey, I got a little problem here, because my neighbors don't keep up their property, that's where that asleep at the wheel panelist might go, what did she say? And then they see the picture and, you know, they don't maintain the yard and it's in disrepair and it looks like, a transient lives there. Then, you may not say it out loud, you know, like, I got that problem too. And so they may be sympathetic to it. I can't put a value on that, but I would certainly put a question mark. Like, I don't know how much you're gonna discount it, but this neighbor is going in the wrong direction. More people are renting and less people are owning. The HOA is going down. Cry me a river. So I think we're about one more. Any more? One more, okay. We're gonna wrap up.
Here on this form, it says to appear by telephone conference, call, or video conference, which I would like to do video conference. You must provide written notice at least 10 days before the hearing, and any evidence must be submitted by written affidavit.
Before the ARB, before the hearing begins, my experience is that they seem to keep referencing, but that's only if you're not there to present your own evidence. You see, I've never had anything notarized, because I'm always there, I'm sworn in. Mr. Berlanga, do you promise to tell the truth? Yes, I do. Therefore, if I submit evidence, that substitutes for notarizing the evidence. Now, if you were submitting it and you were never heard, you were never sworn in, then there would be that necessity to have it notarized.
Are you saying that since I want to appear by video conference, if I want to appear by video conference?
They're gonna swear you in, and everything that's gonna be recorded, you legitimize the evidence, because you swore that this is the truth. I know, I read that all the time. I've yet to have somebody go, Mr. Ron, sorry, we can't let you use that evidence because, you didn't notarize it. I don't know where they come up. I've never, zero, the whole state, it doesn't have to be, notarize the evidence if you're not presenting it. You say, to legitimize, but if you're presenting it, they're swearing you in. You will literally be sworn in that you're telling the truth. So I appreciate your literal reading of that. You're welcome to call them back and say, but I'm going to appear. Do I have to have it notarized? And they say, no, don't. Just bring your evidence.
So is it better to physically appear downtown?
If you have the time and you want them, but I don't encourage it. I want to be respectful of your time, and I want you to enjoy the benefit of telephone at the very least. You, unlike me, I have a face for radio. I would make a very pleasant appearance. I would be on video if I was you. Because they see you, and they see the expressions on your face, and you're like, you look like somebody that they might relate to. So I'd rather make it convenient to your schedule. But if you want to go down there, just recognize you got to commute there and back, and they can keep you as long as 2 hours if they're running behind. That's not common. But I just don't want you to interpret, no, I did not recommend that that's your first choice. Now, 3 years ago, absolutely, I would say, please go down there. But thanks to COVID, they have to give you a hearing. Thanks to COVID, we know how to do Zoom. Thanks to COVID, the telephone's better. Thanks to COVID, they're more quick to get that email, share the evidence. All right, I'm going to cheat you one more question.
So, it's better that you shoot a telephone and not have to use video of any kind?
I don't know, they might like your furry face. You look friendly enough, you'd smile.
I don't know how to do
Well, then we'll learn to Zoom together. All right, y'all been great. I'll stay around, but look, I want to kind of dismiss y'all as a group. I'll stay here.
Before you go anywhere, if you would, another round of applause for our presenter, Mike Berlanga. A round of applause for Gary and his crew from the Knights of Columbus Council 7613 Fish Hall.
You're loud enough.
Okay, so, want to thank ChristopherHall.org again. If you would like to rent the facility, ChristopherHall.org, and it is a fantastic facility. As you can tell, the air conditioning works. This has been a gratuitous event, and I want to thank them for making it possible for us to have it here. The air conditioning costs money. While this is a free event, it does cost different. It does cost things to put things on. So you can go to SanAntonioFamilyAssociation.com if you care to and give a donation if you like. SanAntonioFamilyAssociation.com. SanAntonioFamilyAssociation.com, and we will share with ChristopherHall.org. So one thing to think about, and I want Michael to answer a question for me, because one of the things that they went through in my own informal, formal, and then appeal to the state is they said, well, this is just wear and tear. This is delayed maintenance, or delayed, what do we call it, Michael? Deferred maintenance. And so you have an answer to help people, because I think that's what I've seen come up mostly with people is when the answer will be, this is just deferred maintenance. You can't discount this. You need it's something you should have already done.
Well, I remember, I just think they were being unreasonable at the informal. They just didn't like it. You had so much, you were overwhelming them because you had estimates that were significant. And I don't think honestly, I just don't think they believed it. But that was, we talked about that. That was wrong of them to say, well, that's deferred maintenance. Well, those homes that are sold, we presume, don't have that deferred maintenance. And maybe times have changed, but back then, I really think that they just were being disrespectful of the evidence at the formal, and at the arbitration, I think maybe they were just overwhelmed because we really beat them up. We showed them a lot more than they could possibly imagine.
So I'm sending my wife next time. She's a lot prettier. With that, I would like to read you something before you take off, because I know you'll be here for a while, and thank you very much for doing that. And if you would, can somebody tell me, is there a warning on that camera right there that says anything on it?
Nope.
Okay, great. So I want to read you something real quick. We are on the parish of St. Mark, the Evangelist Catholic Parish, which Catholic grounds and Christopher Hall is on. I want to read you something from the Catechism of the Catholic Church I think you'll find very interesting. This is in regards to private property. The responsibility of the state. Economic activity, especially the activity of a market economy, cannot be conducted in an institutional, juridical, or political vacuum. On the contrary, it presupposes sure guarantees of individual freedom and private property, as well as a stable currency and efficient public services. Hence, the principal task of the state is to guarantee the security, so that those who work and produce can enjoy the fruits of their labors and thus feel encouraged to work efficiently and honestly. Another task of the state is that of overseeing and directing the exercise of human rights in the economic sector. However, primary responsibility in this area belongs not to the state but to individuals and to various groups and associations which make up society. That's Catechism of the Catholic Church, paragraph 2431. So, important to know your rights and private property rights, because our rights come from where? They don't come from the state, they come from God. And so, important to know your rights, and so I want to thank you all for being here. Know that we will, everybody, if you didn't sign the papers, the 2-piece paper back there, make sure you put your name on it, email on it, mobile, and I'll get that to Michael Berlanga, so you'll be able to be in contact with him, and we'll send you the presentation. Did everybody find something of interest tonight that they learned? It was beneficial. The time was it wasted? It was good? Well, very good. Well, on behalf of the San Antonio Family Association, I want to thank you for coming, and we will close in prayer, if you would join me. God our Father, giver of life, we entrust the United States of America, the state of Texas, Bexar County, and the city of St. Andrews to your loving care. You are the rock on which this nation was founded. You alone are the true source of our cherished rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Reclaim this land for your glory and dwell among your people. Send your spirit to touch the hearts of our nation's leaders with an intense desire to fulfill the responsibilities that protects individuals, marriages, families, and long-term domestic prosperity. Open our public officials' minds and all people who live in America to the inestimable worth of human life, to the responsibilities that accompany human freedom. Remind your people that true happiness is rooted in seeking and doing your will. Through the intercession of your Holy Spirit, grant us the courage to reject the culture of death and indifference, socialism and communism, egalitarianism, totalitarianism, and bless us with your abundant grace, the desire, strength, and fortitude to be courageous conduits to help bring about a new culture of life, freedom and responsibility, marriage and family. We ask for your divine assistance to help us be and remain faithful to you and for our collective petitions through your Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. With that, I would like to remind you, this Saturday is your Texas constitutional amendments, your municipal bond elections, and Northeast Independent School District Board election. 3 positions on the Northeast Independent School District Board. Do you know that Northeast Independent School District is a taxing authority? So who you elect will determine what your property tax rate is from the Northeast Independent School District. Very important to get out, get the information, and vote. You can get that information at SanAntonioFamilyAssociation.com and at TexasFamilyAction.com. So with that, thank you very much for your time and attention. Happy Easter season, and God bless you.
The legislature has to be held accountable to take I'm accountable. Your place is why you do this, and try to get down to it's gonna be a big okay, you got my contact information too.
Well, nice talking to you.
You too.
Good luck on,
You too.
I think I'm still a little bit, whoa.
Patrick, thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.